Great to be here. No, fifth time now, I think.
Fifth time.
Yeah. Super happy that we also focus this time on sustainability topic I'm super passionate about. Let me just share my presentation. Okay. Yeah, so I'm Amos, CEO and co-founder of Optibus. We are a software platform for operating and optimizing public transportation. We all here believe that central to the conversation about sustainability is what we call the transportation puzzle. As a kid, I always liked puzzles. Logic problems, later on math problems. And it's always satisfying when you get to solve a hard puzzle. But it's not every day that you get to solve a hard puzzle that also solves a worldwide problem. So I was studying math and computer science university, and I studied the famous traveling salesperson problem. Simple problem to state, which basically tells the story of a salesperson that needs to visit many different locations. And you need to find the shortest path for that person to go and visit all these points. Now, it's a really simple problem to state, but it's unsolvable with today's computers. So I learned about that problem, and around that time, my father, who was the CFO of a large public transit company, told me about a different puzzle called the transportation puzzle. So like the traveling salesman problem, transportation problem is also very simple to state. You need to design the most efficient transit network for the city. But this puzzle is way more complex than the traveling salesman problem. In public transport, you don't just transport one person in the most efficient way. You move hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people in each city, while juggling many moving pieces of the puzzle. So you need to design the route and where to allocate stops. You need to decide which driver takes which bus and which route during which hours. You need to decide when a bus is refuel or charged. You need to deal with legal regulation, when a driver takes a break and where, work under a limited public budget, ensuring transit access for all riders, making sure buses arrive on time, and so on. And until that moment, I didn't really know how complex it is to plan a transit network, but it's really, really complex. And the traveling salesman problem, like that problem, this problem is also unsolvable. Well, at least until we created Optibus. So after studying that problem from a mathematical standpoint, the team and I met with transit agencies around the world to understand their pain points. And it was clear that the use of manual planning methods, like the one you see here in this image, and the lack of technology in this industry, which is amazing to see how such a large industry doesn't have sophisticated technology, results in poor service to billions of people around the world. Cities are full of these empty buses. Buses show up late or not at all, or several buses show up at the same time. Transit networks are fixed for years or do not adapt to demand in any way. And lack of transit coverage results in hundreds of millions of people with no access to a proper job. Now, even if you have a route that takes you where you need to go, it can take hours to get there. This, by the way, in this image is a real example of how long it takes to get from San Francisco to Silicon Valley using public transit. 1 hour and 47 minutes with 3 transfers and 20 minutes walk. Now compare that with 45 minutes by car, and you start to understand why only 5% of the US population use public transit. And this is for a journey that over 100,000 people make every day. So we have an inefficient transit system. What's the result of that? Reliance on the private car. Today, 180,000 new cars are added to the roads every single day. And we don't really have place for all these cars. And all the traffic pollutes the planet with 3 billion tons of CO2 emissions every year. Now, to accommodate all these cars, we invest trillions into roads and parking, adding concrete and asphalt and ruining nature and public spaces. So when we started Optibus, we asked some simple questions. What if we can create more efficient networks? What if we build networks that can adapt to demand better? Will it solve the problem? Now, it turns out that if you build a transit system that works, people will use it. That's what we see from many different examples in data. Back to the example of commuting from San Francisco to Silicon Valley. Today, about 80% of employees of some of the largest companies in the Valley are getting to work with the bus. These companies ended up building their own mass transit system because the public one is not working well enough. And people actually use it every day because it picks them up from convenient spots and takes them to work and back quickly and reliably every day. Now, today, Optibus powers over 60% of all the transportation for tech workers in Silicon Valley. But this is just the beginning. Optibus also powers one of the largest electric bus deployments in the US with 5 million zero emissions miles driven, helping to protect the beautiful environment of Antelope Valley. Our algorithms optimize when and how long to charge the vehicle and what charger to use. And without this technology, it is almost impossible to use electric vehicles efficiently in public transit. In the UK, Optibus now powers over 50% of the entire country public transport system, which includes also one of the world's most advanced systems in London. That includes designing new transit networks, optimizing existing one, and improving performance and efficiency. In New Zealand, we now power the largest transportation agency in the country with over 90 million annual trips in and around Auckland. In Brazil, in the capital city of Brasilia, our algorithms were able to optimize the city's network and reduce the number of vehicles on the road by more than 10%. In South Africa, Optibus is the first to optimize the country's unregulated minibus taxis, moving them from an unorganized and almost random system to a state-of-the-art transit network. Now, with all of that, I'm proud to say that today, Optibus powers 2.5 billion passenger trips per year. And by getting people out of their cars and by driving the transition to electric transportation, we are now responsible for reducing 11 million tons of CO2 emissions every year. Now, this is equivalent to planting about 180 million trees. So super proud of our team, about 250 employees now, working in 12 countries for solving the world's toughest and most impactful problems in over 500 cities around the world. So we have the technology to create efficient public transit networks that people want to use. What if we could bring that technology to every city? And what if we can improve public transit so that people will use it instead of their car? Like the example we saw in Silicon Valley and many other cities. How much CO2 will that reduce? So here in Zurich, that will be 1 million tons of CO2 by doing that. But take the city of Lahore, Pakistan as an example, city of 11 million that is considered one of the most polluted cities in the world that had to shut down schools and businesses in November due to toxic level of smog. Moving those to using public transit will reduce 25 million tons. So I want to leave you with one final thought. Person in the EU generate on average 8.4 tons of CO2 emissions every year. 8.4 tons. To stop climate change, per the Paris climate goals, every person on the planet needs to reduce their CO2 emissions to an average of 2.2. So we are at 8.4, we need to get to 2.2. By building better public transit network and moving people to use public transit instead of their car, each person saves 2.3 tons of CO2 emissions just by that single thing. So improving public transit has a direct and significant impact on sustainability. And that is the mission of Optibus. Thank you.